We now finish our coverage on the wing gambit on a move you'll certainly face. Also a move that I seem to face more often than most when I'm playing blitz games. So an important alternative. And I think the thing to bear in mind with the positions we're going to see here is that the sort of structures, not necessarily the memorizing the moves, but the structures that you're going to like visualize, see in a moment, are structures you're very likely to get when playing the wing gambit. So if you're not a wing gambit fan, if you're not, if you're not a fan of these structures, then, you probably picked the wrong opening. But we're going to convince you, or me, that these structures are very nice white. And this is where we get our 2 pawns in the center, but we're a pawn down. But the center is under our control, and there's not much black can do to contest that center. And if he does, we can push on anyway. So after the moves e4, c5, b4, imagine how much fun it will be just whipping that pawn out to that square. And now takes on b4, and here our normal move a3, and now pawn takes a3. In some ways you could say this is the proof of the pudding, right? Black's just taking all the pawns, accepting the gambit, and asking us what is our compensation. Well, again, our compensation starts with the move d4. I like this move. There are other options, but it seems correct to put 2 pawns in the middle. And our compensation relies on these pawns. It's not always a quick win, but a lot of the time, what are we actually doing here? Well, we're playing, and I think this is important to bear in mind how we develop our pieces, already. And we want to play really with bishop d3. This is preparing for when black castles. On c4, it's a little bit more exposed to some e6, d5. We don't want to lose tempo. So after bishop d3, we want to then continue with knight e2. This seems like the right square for the knight. And later on, we can play c3 just to support our center, castles, and often even f4, bringing another pawn into the mix. So that's what you do with the kingside pieces. Now, your queenside pieces are a bit more flexible. And generally, we want to take here with the knight, I feel. And in these lines, the knight coming into b5 is less seen. It's still playable, but it doesn't normally have as much point. In actual fact, because remember, we're going to have a pawn on c3, this knight most often travels to c4. Because on c4, we can come to the center, one of these 2 squares, towards black's king. And let's remember, we can also play on the queen side. So there are ideas of knight b6, pressurizing there as well, and even knight a5. The bishop on c1 is normally the last to develop. With the pawn on c3, unlike the last video, there's less point on, I would say, developing it to b2 because it's going to be in the way of a couple of pawns. But later on, we can be very flexible with that bishop and just even leave it on that square until we know where we want to go with that bishop. So here, black has a number of options, of course, and he can try to do something in the center at some point, which we've seen, or he can just keep things contained with like d6 first. Now, d6, I think, is a very normal move because he wants to go knight f6, right? Black wants to develop. We've got to think what our opponent's trying to do. Now, if he goes knight to f6 immediately, he's just walking into e5, and we will use these pawns to push that knight around, and that knight doesn't have anywhere stable to go, and our pawns are just going to increase our control. So knight f6 doesn't make any sense. Now, the same can also be said, really, for the move knight to c6. That's also going to get pushed around, right? e5, d5, knight e5, and we can push that around. And again, just seems to help us. So a number of moves here, and let's have a look. The two, as well as d6, I'd say the two main ones are e5 and d5. But these moves a little bit slower than we've seen in the last two videos because black's wasted a move greedily grabbing that pawn. So then they're not as good. So probably d6 is the most important. But before we get there, we'll very quickly cover the other things. Now, a2's a move to try and discombobulate us a little bit. We're going to win that pawn anyway. So black's thinking, okay, I'm going to bring your rook to a2. I don't think we need to fear this one. We can still bring our knight to a3. And also, let's not forget, our bishop can go to a3. We're not ruling that move out. You know, don't always stick to, you know, you've got to play case-to-case scenario. And here, rook takes a2 seems to be good. In some ways, we even see the queen coming to a1. And this is one advantage of the rook being here. We saw this in the last video. And then we're really playing on the A file and towards the center. So that's quite a unique idea. Maybe black can try d5. I mean, if he ever goes knight c6, like we said, we go here. And that knight's just getting run about. And after this one, I do like the move rook a4. I do like the idea of just, you know, using that rook actively. So d5, I think, is logical. And the point being that we want to open up. We want to take on d5 generally. The rule here, when d5 is played, we nearly always want to take unless black has a pawn on e6. If black has a pawn on e6, we're often playing e5. But if we play e5 here, there's no pawn on e6. So black has this good bishop in these lines. It's still obviously playable, but not really what we want. And it's a course where we're opening things up. So let's do that. And now queen takes, and now we just play c4, building our center. And after something like queen e4 check, we can go bishop e3. The only thing to bear in mind there is don't lose your knight. And we're getting excellent development here, like e5, black trying to validate his ideas. And now knight c3 runs into a pin. So let's go knight d2, where our knight is more secure if the bishop comes here. In actual fact, this move would run into d5, followed by our queen coming out here, which is very dangerous to black. And if something like queen g4, well, I propose now there's a number of tempting moves that we don't mind giving up a second pawn if we get development. And I like this bishop e2. Queen takes, bishop f3, and now knight e2. We've given 2 pawns up, but don't worry about that. And we got lots of ideas. Rook g1, even rook a5. Look at that for a unique option with plenty of play. Black has only developed his queen. A very fun, lively, aggressive position to play. So a2 doesn't impress. Don't really see the point of that one. Now e6 is actually another move quite like d6, right? It's just a move which I think is going to occur a fair bit. And now we continue by developing our king side. Again, we don't need to panic because we got the better positional play in the middle. And I know generally when you sack a pawn, you're trying to keep the initiative up, but in some cases, you know, it is the positional compensation, and we don't want to lose that by panicking. And here we're just going to do our normal thing. So it feels like d5 is right. And now what you play here, following the rules we've seen and heard before. Well, here we play e5 because the pawn is on e6. And I like this move. This is going into those positions we've seen previously, but I do think it helps us not committing to knight f3. And this is something I've learned from studying the wing gambit here, because I used to play the wing gambit against the French. And I always put my knight on f3. But in actual fact, as we see, knight e2 it seems to be a much better square because we can free our f pawn, but also this nice maneuver in some cases of bringing it around to h5, which is especially true when black moves his knight. So e6 is quite similar to what we looked at. Now e5. Well, here black's trying to open up lines and give a pawn back, but I think we should take the offer and take here when we have great play and open lines. Now, something like knight c6 is trying to win that back. If black grabs the pawn back straight away, then I suggest bishop d2 and now knight c3. And we have easy development. Knight f3, our bishop can decide where to go, and we're going to castle with a lot of play for the pawn. Very good initiative. And the other thing to remember structurally is that when black loses these two pawns, which happens a lot when, because he's lost the c pawn from our opening, and when he loses the e pawn as well, structurally he's really bad, because this knight d5 at some point he can't get rid of that knight, and our bishop coming here at some point he can't block it with a pawn. So it seems to me like structurally this is quite a dodgy way for black to play. So after taking, knight c6 makes more sense, but now we can take on a3 with the knight, because this gives us quite a strong threat, actually. I'd say this is a threat, because look at that one coming in to another weak square that those pawns have given up. And if knight takes e5, covering that square, well, now we can come the other way. We can come knight b5. We've got f4 to come. We've even got bishop a3, and we're doing everything to take over this square. And this is, again, brilliant compensation. So queen a5 check now maybe makes more sense. Again, we block with the bishop. And after this one, I think we guard our pawn with simply bishop d3, and we're all set to go. Knight b5, bishop c3 after that move, knight to f3, castles quickly, and black's just moved his queen too many times. It doesn't make any sense. So e5, not the way to play. Black's trying to sacrifice, but he can't sacrifice because we're the one controlling the center and has the easier development. So that doesn't make much sense. Move, if he's going to play in the center, then d5 is the way to do this. And what do we do now? And again, it's just following these little rules. Well, now we capture on d5, of course, because that has to be captured by the queen. And here, knight c3 is interesting, but we can now revert to another plan even. There's a number of good moves. We don't need to play c4 like we did before, so our rook's not on pre. And a thing to always consider when the queen's out here is this knight takes a3 move. I mean, we might as well win that pawn back. We're only one pawn down. And the reason when the queen comes here, I like this move, is just because knight b5 is going to gain so many tempo, and combined with the bishop coming to f4, be quite uncomfortable for black. Even after queen d8, knight b5 is still very much an option. And here, something like bishop d7 we can look at. I mean, knight f6 is maybe better with the knight trying to come to d5 to meet bishop f4, right? So this is black's idea. But if we first play bishop c4, this transposes to another variation that we're going to cover. And this actually left an experienced grandmaster, Manakato, in trouble with black, because look, it's very easy. These positions are very easy to play. This bishop coming here is a ginormous threat. And we can castle quickly. a6 doesn't help, right? Because we go bishop here, and if you take here, well, we flick in this check first, and we win your rook. Game over. So this idea of playing d5 here seems a bit slow because a knight takes a3. Let's have a look at bishop d7, trying to get rid of that annoying knight. But now we just play bishop f4. You have to take this one, but now there's other problems. And a move when this light squared bishop goes, well worth remembering, is queen f3. This is a great way, and our pieces are really, really hitting those squares. And after something like queen c8, black's defending, in a pretty horrible way. There's many sensible moves, but there's a beautiful idea here. And this is an idea I just love playing because it's so unique. Rook a4. What a move. Because we want to play rook c4. How many times you get a chance to do that? Just imagine that rook getting there. It's going to be crushing. Can black defend here? I'm not even sure black can defend already. Black's on the verge of losing. Rook c4 is so strong. So it's not so simple for black, to take black. I mean, my opinion is that black can't really take on a3 and then play something in the center. If he's going to play d5 or e5, he should go back to the stuff we looked at in the last variation. One more move, which, one more move that doesn't come onto our main d6 idea, which I think is what you're going to get most of the time, is b6. Actually played by Grandmaster Furman in 2006. And again, you know, I'm not in a rush to take this one because I'm not entirely sure what I want to take with at the moment. Knight takes normally, but maybe bishop takes, maybe even rook takes. But here, I'm just going to continue my standard development. Bishop d3, and now bishop b7. And after this one, well, knight e2 is our normal move, but now that that bishop is sort of maybe x-raying down there, and black hasn't done anything with these guys, I think there's an argument to be said for knight to f3. I mean, again, you can move your knight to f3. The knight does come to f3 a lot. That probably doesn't make too much difference. It's kind of preference. And we're after e6 castles. We're gonna see the standard position where, you know, you have to enjoy playing these structures. Otherwise, this is not the line for you. But it's quite hard still for black to develop. You've got to remember this, because his knights get attacked with these pawns. We have this pressure on the queen side, and we're just moving our pieces out. Once we've moved our pieces out, I feel, well, for example, in this case, I'd be going knight takes, and maybe here I'll be putting my bishop on b2, because actually this looks all right, because I want to play d5, and I want to get my bishops on these diagonals. I like d5 when the bishop's here, because it seems to blunt it out. If black plays knight to f6, well, in this case, I'm going to grab the chance to play e5. This is our normal response to knight to f6 if we can. And if the knight comes to d5, we can certainly think about keep chasing it. But we can even now show why we've moved the knight here and go for a direct attack. This is very dangerous to black. And knight e4 has been tried, but now rook e1, f5 has been played. But I think we always open up the position. And again, this is a case for knight f3, knight g5, with some actual annoying threats of bishop takes h7 and the queen coming in. Powerful, powerful initiative, especially now our rook's lined up. So you can see black can go wrong very quickly in these lines. So after b takes, we're going d4. Now let's come to our main move, d6. And black is trying to respond in like a perk, or you could even say black line fashion. You know, just by developing the knight to this square and maybe playing e5, trying to stop our e-pawn at least coming on, because if it does, you can take it. So what do? Well, of course, we can play bishop d3, but I mean, in this case, I like knight takes a3. I mean, again, I think you can go bishop d3 first, but now I think taking here with the knight makes sense, because if we think about it logically, we're not really going to take with the bishop, because the pawn on d6 is like stopping that bishop. I mean, there's more of an argument in these positions to take with the bishop at some point because of the d6 square. I mean, let's just say some ridiculous move like knight e7's played, because we haven't gone with a knight, which is still okay. Bishop takes makes some sense, but after the standard move d6, bishop d3 is fine, but we want to play knight takes a3. Let's just get it out of the way now. Doesn't make a great difference. And again, we have this knight c4, but, you know, don't forget, knight b5 is there. If we get a chance to do it, we will play that one. It's not a threat, but it's hanging in the air. And now black should go knight f6. Black needs to develop. If black plays a6 here, which is really overly careful, then we go back to our standard plan. What's our standard plan here? And I think this is very important. This is why I really want to show the ideas for this setup, because you're likely to get this position. What is our standard plan development and our standard plan getting the pieces in with long-term play? Bishop d3. Yes, I like the square. Let's say black goes to g6. Well, now we play c3 because that's defended off bishop g7. Where do we put our knight? Now, in these cases, the knight is not coming to g5. I mean, I think my rule would be I play knight f3 if I ever think I can go knight g5 and create some threats. But here, black's going to castle against that. So I like knight e2, and after knight f6, f4. Might as well play it immediately here. And this gives us a very powerful center and full compensation for that pawn. Let's say castles here, and we're ready to play e5 now. I don't see why not. Don't panic about that pawn. Other ideas I would play here is maybe getting my queen over towards black's king. I would even think about f5 in that position so I can get the bishop over there. We're going to see this in the Caro-Kann hillbilly attack. And this seems like a dangerous position. Black has tried e5 here, trying to do something in the center. We don't even need to rush into deciding what to do because d6 is now weak. And I really like this next move. And this is this next move is maybe a move you're like, okay, you know, don't think I'd see that. And it's kind of thinking, well, before we decide upon, right, this is our 100% attacking plan. So before we go f5, which is okay, why not get our last piece into the game? Because once we got everything into the game, then we can decide what to do. And we're also, with our next move, and this is very important for the wing gambit, more so than the other gambits, because in the other gambits, we're just going full steam ahead often. But in the wing gambit, we're often thinking what black wants to do. And I kind of like putting my bishop here, but I don't want to run into knight g4. And bishop is e3 is clearly the best square. We can even target b6 there, you know, with some ideas with the knight coming in. And I just like this little h3 move. This is showing that we're dominating the position. Yeah, you've got the extra pawn, but so what? I'm controlling the center. And now, again, let's think what black's move is going to be. Start thinking like this and you'll become a better player immediately. And if we start thinking what black's move is going to be, it's not clear what he's actually going to play. I mean, even something like this, there's a couple of interesting ideas. I mean, bishop e3, keeping the tension is fine. But now I might even be tempted to sort of take here and go d5 and then go c4. I know I'm a pawn down, but with c5 coming, those two pawns are tremendous. The knight coming into c4, behind it, the bishop coming over here. This is tremendous play for one little pawn. So you've got to be flexible, and something like e takes d4. If he takes on f4, well, he's opening up that line. And after this, maybe knight c6 is a better way of playing, because if we push the pawn now, there's some ideas here. But now I like keeping the tension with knight c2. Again, not rushing. This move is just consolidating, stopping knight b4, and we're getting ready to play f5. I might go knight g3 first, f5, starting our attack over there. So after d4, d6, knight takes a3 is the right time to play, and now knight f6, bishop d3, and now what moves can be tried here? So knight f6 is a move, okay, we haven't looked at yet, but it's the best move. Bishop d3 looks right with just simple development here, as we've basically talked about many times before. Number of moves and setups here. Let's have a look. There's e6, looks okay. There's e5, we've kind of seen this kind of thing. There's g6, we've also seen this kind of thing. And there's knight c6, which is our main move because black's trying to develop. Now, e6 is, again, a setup I feel you might get a lot because black's saying, okay, I'm the pawn up, I just want to put my bishop here. And now, how do you develop here? Well, knight f3 doesn't have as much sense as knight e2. Knight e2 our preferred method because after bishop e7, we can castle first. Castles f4 again. And this is dangerous for black. Black is a pawn up, but he can't use that pawn. The only time he's going to get to use that pawn is if our attack backfires. And that's up to you, really, if your attack backfires or not. I mean, it's no reason it should backfire in this position whatsoever. And now if d5 ever, well, here I always like meeting this with e5. And this actually happened in Kumala Malakato, that game we're talking about. Malakato, strong grandmaster, he tried knight e4, and now a very nice move from Kumula, c4, and this is just trying to use those pawns. And after knight c6 here, he now took on this square. And the problem is queen takes is leaving that knight very loose. So pawn takes is pretty much forced. And now f5. And we can really see why we put our knight here. Again, this knight, what are we doing with this knight here? Well, now it's not doing anything. I always like in these lines bringing all my pieces in because I'm not rushing. And I like the idea of bringing this one sort of around this way, c2, e3. Don't forget that idea if it can't come forwards. We can also play a timely exchange on e4 and try to win that pawn at some moment. But don't be in a rush to do that because you don't want to allow unfounded play against your d-pawn. And of course, f6 is always hanging like the, I was going to say, what's it? The dagger, no, oh no, I can't even get the right if it's the dagger or what it is. The dagger of, you know what I mean, the sword of Damascus. No, that's not right. You know what I mean? That is always ready to open up the king. So this is fantastic play. So d5 doesn't really suit. But if you don't play d5, again, ask yourself, if you were black here, what would you actually be trying to do? What is your plan? Our plan, I'm going to go c3. Here, I'll probably go knight c2. Because if I go knight c4, I encourage d5. So I'm just going to get my pieces perfect. c3, knight c2. And do notice here, I don't need to commit that bishop, yeah? And then I might even go knight g3, f5. I might even do one of my favorite rook swingers, try to attack along here. And at the right moment, I mean, this could even come a lot quicker. I might play e5 because that bishop just suddenly could just sacrifice itself over there, especially as a rook on f3 or something to increase. Lots of play, right? So what about e5? Well, this is the kind of move that a Philidor or maybe Black Lion player could play, but why don't play c5 and move 1? And against this move, there are some interesting options, like you can still go knight e2, but I also want to show you that if you just play c3 and you don't do anything with this pawn, we can still just follow up our plan, right? Knight e2, castles f4, and once we've done all this, then we can decide, because if black ever takes, we get this 2 pawns here, third pawn coming through. So bishop e7, now let's go knight e2 as we've seen, and now castles, now we play f4, and we're intending knight c2, castles, knight g3, attacking over on the king side, as we always want to do. Knight g3 is useful because it can come in somewhere, it supports the middle, and we're just bringing all of our pieces towards that guy so we can checkmate it. Now, most likely one of the best moves in this position, actually, I mean, knight c6 I face a lot, but most likely one of the best moves is g6. So this is key. Now, why is g6 a good move? And I think this is a move you're probably going to face. I think it's a good move just because of the fact that the bishop's not good on this square. The bishop's much better on g7, number 1. It means that black can get castled quickly, number 2. And also, our bishop is, muted there. Because if we ever play e5, we're not going to have attack here. So this is one of the better options, but it's still fine for us. We're going to go knight e2, bishop g7, our normal thing. Castles, knight c6 we'll sort of come to in our main line. So let's have a look at castles. And again, patience. Let's just go c3 because we might as well block that one out. And now knight bd7. Again, e5 gives us this target f4 to play for. And, this was actually included in Fighting the Anti-Sicilians by Richard Palliser, included this as a possible line for black, but he's changed his mind a bit. His suggestion for black there was taking here knight c6, played by Kupracek, very famous grandmaster of the black pieces. And again, these positions, I'm not claiming white's better. I'm just claiming white has enough compensation, as in this course, for a pawn. And here, Richard, in his original work, noted knight c2 and knight g3, which is still that plan that we've noted. But now that some things have happened in the middle, I think we can even go for a more aggressive idea. with f5. You know, which pawn do you push in these positions? Well, e5 is going to allow a lot of opening on lines. I like f5 as a move in general, especially when there's a pawn here, because I want to get my rook in. My bishop on c1, note that we haven't used that piece yet, because it often, like in a Dutch opening, if you've got my chessable course on the Dutch, often wants to come straight in to a much better square. And after something like rook e8, let's just see, we can even take on this square and bring it in to g5. And there's a lot of pressure here. The knight is coming around, and we're trying to bring this one. The queen is coming around. Let's say h6. Well, we can actually take on f6. And now, after this one, e5 is very interesting. But actually, again, now that we've created a lot of weaknesses over here, we can just wait. And we can target these ones with knight f4, queen g3, and these kind of moves here. And again, compare the king's safety position. Ours is much better. So let's have a look. So g6 again, we're going to go for this plan. And rather than e5, what if black doesn't commit but develops? Well, of course, we play f4. And now black's done all these normal moves, but it's like, right, well, what are you actually doing in the position? And he's like, oh, yeah. And if he goes e5 here, of course, we go f5, like we've seen. And this is very dangerous. Now, knight b6 has been tried, but it looks like a terrible square for the knight. But black wants to develop. And in this case, we can see that his bishop is bad. And this goes back to understanding what your opponent wants to do. He's moved this knight. He's not doing anything with that knight. If you understand that your opponent's last move and he moves a piece, that piece is actually not doing anything. But he's only got one purpose. And black's only purpose is to move the bishop and try to do something like this. Then you can just stop it. And I like this h3 move again. And now we're just kind of waiting. And here we can even go bishop e3. But again, I'm not in a rush to play this move. If I was white here, I'd be thinking, well, f5's coming. I can play this at some point. I might bring my queen over to h4 first, because I like it. I might even go g4. Whoa! And if e5 now, actually knight b5 is now a good move, because let's not forget, this is weak. And we might be taking that one and taking on e5 next. Little tactic. Queen takes, take on e5. So g6 is a very decent option, but we have perfect play. And if you're going to play g6, maybe this is a better square for the knight, right? So now c3 is the right way to play. Let's watch our opponent's last move. This might be okay, but I just want to rule out that move. I don't want to lose my bishop for that knight. Remember, in these variations, black's knights can't find good squares. So there's no point in these positions, you know, doing bishop b5 and taking here, which we did in some of the other wing gambit lines. But in these lines, why would we want to do that? It's pointless. So c3 is much more sensible, the move we're going to play anyway. We're relying on that center. And now g6 key. Now e5 again has been played, but knight e2 is this move, which I think is very nice. And if bishop e7, well, we go castles. And after castles, this is one case where black gets the bishop to g4. But what would you now play? This is worth thinking about. And white, I think, has a very nice attack. And I want to show you some more moves here, because this is a middle game position. But knowing the middle game plans is hopefully why you've brought the videos. I'm trying to explain them here, what the move trainer might not teach you. And now, if you went knight c2, you're on the right track. You don't need to rush. There's no point encouraging that bishop to take there. Why would we do that? This knight consolidates and has ideas of traveling. There's no rush. And after something like pawn takes d4, pawn takes d4, d5, again, what is black's move? We're going to bring our queen over. And against this one, I like playing e5 now. This knight has to block our bishop. And here, what do you play now? And let's see, if you get the next move, you're well on your way to understanding these structures. f5, of course we want to play this move. Brilliant move. We've even got rook f4 as an idea. And there was one game, well, actually, this is Richard's own analysis with queen d7. And now we're going to show the power of f6. And after pawn takes, well, let's get rid of that knight. It's the right time to take that. Note our knight defends this one because we could take on f6. And after this one, bishop h6. Again, this bishop comes into the game in one move, hence why we're not rushing developing it. And after rook e8, we've got to get our queen in. Queen is now coming to h4, coming to g7, and we have a tremendous attack. And black actually is in serious trouble now. Now, going back to e5, knight e2, there's one interesting option which we should look at, and that is d5. What if black tries to play this move? And again, this is another line which I think Richard Palliser recommended back in 2007 in his book, Fighting the Anti-Sicilians. But luckily, we've got Richard helping with his course, so he knows all about this move, and he's worked to find a solution. And this is a way that white's... This is one of the only lines where black's like, right, you're not doing what you want to do. I'm trying to react. All the other lines, we just get on with our plan. So what do we do here? Well, taking on d5 is right because we're going to bring a piece to that square. Queen takes is a target, so knight takes. And now castles is still correct. Let's get our position in the right position. And now after e takes d4, because now we're threatening like this move. I didn't really want to play c4 before because, you know, there's some annoying checks. Let's just get castled first to stop that. And our idea is now c4 and d5. Be very nice to get those two moves in, kicking these knights around. So black should take on d4. This is following Richard's recommendation. And Richard recommended knight takes... Well, Hamlet, sorry. Richard actually Richard actually recommended... Was it knight takes d4? No, it couldn't have been. Richard recommended e takes d4, and now knight takes d4 here in this position, which is okay for white with some complex lines of takes, bishop e7, queen h5. This is okay, but he's actually come up with what he feels is an improvement. And the improvement after e takes d4 is not even taking that one, but it's the immediate knight b5. Now, this has more point here because the situation has drastically changed, but black, the position is more open. This is one of the gambit lines generally where it's not going to be as open with our pawns here, but now it's opened up. We're trying to create immediate threats. And our immediate idea is to kick the knight from this square, maybe with c4, and then just bishop to f4 and coming in here. So it's dangerous, this. And the other thing we can do is try and just take this pawn back. But let's have a look. Let's, for example, say we take here, stopping us playing this one. Now black's 3 pawns up, but after bishop e4, he's in a lot of trouble. The knight has to move because we've got this trick of coming into c7. And now bishop f4 anyway, not even fearing the exchange of queens because knight to this square is just really, really strong. And this gives white the advantage. So nice lines there. So now if we go back to g6, I think g6 again is one move where black's saying, okay, well, I don't want to open up the center because you're going to be better positioned. And that is the thing. White should be better positioned when the center opens up because of our space advantage. And now we just go back to our plan. Knight e2, bishop g7. Let's castle first, shall we? Castles and now f4. So this is the line where the knights come to a better square. On d7, it didn't seem right. And this has been quite... I think these moves so far have been very principled moves from both sides. And again, our argument is that our strong center is absolute compensation for the pawn. And now black must either play passively and wait for us to build up, as we've seen, with like little moves like h3, knight to c2, and at the right moment, you could even put the knight on g3, f5, this kind of thing. Or black could play what is considered the main choice, d5. And again, this is limited examples of this because not many people play the wing gambit, but d5 trying to do something in the middle has been played. Now let's have a look. If black plays something a bit slower like a6, well, again, building up is okay, but you can, I mean, you don't have to build up. You can just go f5 immediately, as we've seen, trying to just do the attack straight away. I mean, I'd probably do that on an aggressive day. And, well, let's get the knight in. And now one of the key maneuvers in the middle game, if you've got my Dutch course, you'll know it, queen e1. And there's just a simple old plan, queen h4 and bishop h6. Get rid of that defender. And once you've done that, well, we want to attack h7. We're going to see this in the Hillbilly. So we're going queen h4, bishop h6, and now one of my favorites, the rook comes to h3, and we try to checkmate there. Blunt. The other way black can play in the center is with e5. This was played by Kirill Georgiev, who actually beat Kasparov once. And now you have to be a little bit more careful in this structure about playing f5. Now, we've seen this a lot, but I suppose the one little word of warning is, if you're going to play this move and black can't strike, open up the center, of course this is okay. But here, there's the d5 strike, and all of a sudden, black's knights, because they're well positioned, are supporting that strike very well. So I wouldn't play f5 yet. I'd want to keep control of that one there, and I'd play knight c2 first. This is one case where, because black's got an extra pawn doing something, we shouldn't really rush. Because, of course, this move is not really playable, because at some point we're going to grab that pawn, maybe after just taking here, right? And we're going to do something like this, getting our pawn back with 3 pawns in the center. And after knight c2, again, this hasn't been played, so it's very hard to use examples. But we have a number of ideas. We can play f5, but watch out for d5. Other things we can do is knight g3. I like this move, supporting. We can even now consider bishop a3, because then we create the threat of f takes e5. And the last thing I would say, let's just put a move on the board, is you can now, because d4 is so well defended, you can even play pawn takes here and bishop g5. This is also, you know, a way just to create pressure. I mean, imagine here if you've got your queen over to h4 as well. That'd be completely winning. So there's a lot of pressure going on. So back to the main move, which is d5. We're naturally meeting this with e5. Taking on d5, we said, is normal when there's not a pawn on e6, but that's when black's king hasn't castled. Because black's king has castled here, there's no point opening up that area of the board. We might as well just push on with long-term chances. If the knight goes back, we're going to play f5, and yes, boy, we're rolling. So knight e4 is correct. And here you have a choice. You can play the unhurried knight c2 with the idea of c4, which we've seen before, and, you know, this kind of idea. But bishop takes e4 is our main choice, because after here, we got knight g3, and our pawns do have a very strong impression in the center. And white is probably going to win a pawn back, but black's hoping his light square bishop is going to compensate. And if black tries to hang on to the pawn with something like queen here, well, this is a natural target for that knight. So we're just going to go knight c2, and queen b3 runs into rook a3. And this knight is beautiful in that square. The queen's not well placed with that knight coming to e3. So f6 has been suggested in some places as a way for black to suddenly turn the tables on us and open up the position for his bishop. And here we've seen ideas with like bishop e3 and taking here, but black does get a bit of counterplay on this diagonal, and a new novelty, this course is full of them, to throw your opponents off guard here, is actually pawn takes f6, a new idea, never been played before. Now, I think pawn takes looks best here, you know, one move away from being safe. If bishop takes, these are ugly, and I think we get our pawn back now. We want to get rid of that bishop, so let's say it comes back, and we have a very useful check, followed by knight g5. So we're not a pawn down, and we are laughing with our pieces flying around the board like this. So pawn takes f6, e takes is probably best, and we're not even now going to take that one back, which again might be okay, but you know, it does give, let's say, black some good play on the light squares. Our suggested new idea is f5, and another idea that I've seen many times in the Dutch defense. I love this idea, new stuff. Just saying, we're not in a rush to win that pawn back. We're a gambitier. We're not a greedy. We don't, remember what we were saying earlier, we don't want to cash in our investment too soon. We're going to wait until an opportune moment. And this is cramping black's kingside, and it's causing a lot of problems over there on that area of the board. For example, we want to bring our queen in, things like this. I feel knight e7 is now the best move. If, for example, bishop takes f5, well, I like now knight takes f5, and we don't even have to be in a rush to take with a rook there. What piece would you want on f5 here? The knight. So we can actually, even though we're 2 pawns down, bring that one around and take that pawn. And imagine when that knight gets there. That is going to be horrendous for black with this guy swinging in as well. So I think knight e7 is best, forcing us to do something. Now we have to take on g6. And in this position, we do recapture our pawn. And the reason we've done this little f5, we've opened our rook and we've damaged black's kingside. We've made it a little bit weak. We can argue here that our king is safer than black's king. We can even play very interestingly with this knight coming in. The bishop now has found a way in. Even the queen can join in. And again, you know, there's even ideas of the check. Being a player who plays the Dutch, this is the kind of thing I look for in the Dutch defense. It's a very turbo Dutch with the open f-file and some very nice chances. So we come to the end of the wing gambit now, and I hope you agree that b4 is a very interesting, quite under-theorized, is that a word? It's not well analysed, but just as exciting as many other gambits. I've tried most aggressive lines against the Sicilian. I've played the open Sicilian, but there's so much theory to learn. The wing gambit is going to surprise your opponent. And in these lines that we've seen, I think we've generally talked about most of the ideas here. If your opponent doesn't aim to strike in the center, you can continue with, you know, knight takes a3, bishop d3, c3, knight e2, castles, f4, then push normally with f5 at the right moment. Let's remember that knight coming to c2. If black does decide at some point to play either e5 or d5, these are the only ways you can try to activize his position. Then you need to react. e5, you don't need to rush with that one. You can still just go for your normal plan and then decide. Do watch out for breaks where black gets e5 and d5 in together. That's the only active plan black has. You can show a lot of patience in these positions. You've got the long-term attack, and later on, remember your queen coming over here will give you a lot of fun. Fantastic compensation, and yeah, really, really fun long-term attacking prospects that you're going to get in these variations.